Well, she's back. We didn't really want her back, but she kind of broke through the door and said, Newman, I'm back. It's the amazing Dr. Tamsin Astor, PhD, author of Force of Habit and, Force of Nature unto herself. So Tamsin, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me and letting me break down your door.
Yes. Actually, it was the other way. If we're going to tell the actual truth here, I was like, can we have you back on the show, please? And so I kind of broke down your door. But, it sounds better the way that I told it initially, because, this is such a highly regarded platform that we have here that people are fighting over each other to get a seat as a guest on the selling show.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, exactly. So you are here. I am so thrilled. Let's talk about habits, because I know that you are the queen of habits. I want to start sort of in the middle. We're going to cut to the chase. I want to talk about good habits versus bad habits, because everyone thinks bad habits are incredibly addictive. It's really hard to give up a bad habit, but good habits are so incredibly fragile. Like, oh my God, don't eat that cookie. Don't skip one day at the gym, because that good habit's going to evaporate just like that. So help us cut through the nonsense. And what's the real deal with habits, good, bad, and otherwise? Let's start there.
So the thing that most people forget about or don't know about when they start trying to cultivate good habits or get rid of habits that aren't serving them is that they're just looking at the behavior, the actual habit itself, not really looking into the bits on either side of the habit, the cue, the thing that triggers the habit, the person, the place, the preceding event, the emotion, the time, right? And then what you're getting out of the habit. And our brains are trying to help us out. So when we start doing something in the same order again and again, our brain is like, ooh, this looks familiar. Let me create a habit pattern, an automation, if you will, so that you don't have to think about it. And so what then goes on is that our brain creates this habit loop. And what makes it hard to then break that habit that's not working is that it buries that loop into parts of the brain that are less evolved, right? Our brain evolved up and forward, right? And the cue, the bit that triggers the habit, and the reward, the bit we get out, is happening here in the prefrontal cortex. The behavior is happening in the less evolved part of the brain. So that's one of the problems that we get into, right? Is that we're like, I've just got to create this habit. We're not looking at the bits on either side. And then the kind of even bigger meta level is that none of us operate in a vacuum, right? We have spouses, we have children, we have bosses, we have pandemics, we have sick dogs, all the things that get in the way and push us on and off the habit wagon.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, right before we turned on the mics, we talked about the discipline of being the eye of the storm when all of these things happen, right? Partner, dog, kids, aging parents, economy, recession, depression, whatever. What are some of the centering habits and what are some of the calming habits? Because I know you have this kind of amazing three-part background between neuroscience and yoga and sort of inner wellness and all of these things. When everything is hitting the fan and in all the wrong ways, and I know you've had your share of that exact situation. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes here. But what can people do to keep the wheels from just flying off the bus and getting totally out of control as a victim of all of these horrible outside circumstances?
Well, one of the first things we need to do is need to make sure we take care of our minds. And a lot of the time we think about, we're like, oh, I got to work out and I got to, eat kale. Yes, working out and eating kale is a good thing, but we also have to work on our mental habits. So when everything's feeling, out of whack, or to keep things from feeling like they're out of whack, you want to work with your mind. So meditation is one of the best tools, because what you're doing when you're meditating is you're learning about your mind. Where does my mind go when I'm not filling it with all of the external drama or following all of my little internal like rabbit, right? So meditation is one of the best habits. Second is journaling. About 95% of our actions are driven from the subconscious. So finding tasks and tools like journaling that allow you to scratch below the surface and get that subjective swirl out onto the paper, which gives you a sort of a separation. It makes it a little bit more objective, and you can start to see patterns like, oh, I'm feeling really anxious at the moment, I'm feeling really angry at the moment, I'm talking a lot about this particular relationship or this worry. What can I then do with that? So those are two habits that I, rely on religiously for my own mental well-being, right? What's going on? Am I friends with my mind? Where does my mind go when I'm not feeling it? And when my mind is feeling swirly, can I get it all out on paper and then create a bit of objective distance and look at it and go, okay, let's go with that.
So let's talk about both of those things in a little bit more detail, because I think people hear meditation and it seems like really, really difficult or really esoteric. And it's only, yogis up on the mountain, they're doing the meditation, they're clearing their minds, and there's all kinds of misinformation about what meditation is versus isn't, right?
Yeah.
People think, well, I'm going to meditate on that. To my understanding, that's impossible. You cannot meditate on a subject because meditation is a space of emptiness, right? And it's a space of kind of self-observation and so forth. And that's probably wrong too. So what is meditation? What isn't meditation? And with your clients and audiences, what misconceptions do they have about meditation when they first start to work with you?
So the first thing is that meditation has come out of countries which have often different religious backgrounds than a lot of, the Westerners, right? So the first thing I like to say is that meditation has nothing to do with religion or prayer. And if you look at some of the languages where meditation arose, the word meditation in Pali, which is the ancient language of Tibet, actually means to habituate, to familiarize. So meditation is really seen as mental training, right? Training the mind. That's really what meditation is about. And I'm trained in Tibetan Buddhist meditation, and there are two kind of key paths to that, of that type of meditation. One is the I'm not filling my mind with anything, and it's called calm abiding, and it's about basically becoming friends with your mind. Where does my mind go when I'm not filling it? And you can think of it almost as like playing with the stimulus and response gap, right? Whether the stimulus is the dog barking or the dishwasher beeping, or the repetitive thought, and then the not acting, the not responding, right? So can I play with that gap? So it's not so much about having an empty mind, it's about learning not to follow the thoughts, right? So you're sitting there and you hear the dog bark and you think, when I next go to the store, I mustn't forget to buy dog treats. And when I buy dog treats, do we have to get some more of the anti-flea? Oh, thinking. Inhale, exhale, right? So, and then there is a form of meditation which is called reflective meditation, or depending on look at the translations, but you're analyzing. And then that one, loving kindness meditation, where you are working with your feelings about particular people. That is, you're thinking about a particular person, you're thinking about your feelings towards a particular person, you're working with your emotions around a particular person or event. So there is a type of meditation that requires that level of focus. But I think the thing that is the biggest kind of confusion in our culture is the conflation between mindfulness and meditation. Mindfulness is paying attention and being present, right? So you can mindfully read a book, i.e. you're not thinking about other things as you're reading. You can mindfully walk your dog. The sun is shining, my dog's tugging at the leash, rather than like, oh, did I pay the gas bill as I'm walking the dog, right? Meditation, you're purely working with your habit, your mental habits, your mind, and you're not, so playing the piano is not meditation, but it can be done mindfully, right?
Totally. Well, let's talk about journaling, because I think journaling is the other big mystery. So people listening might be like, okay, so I've heard about journaling. Is this just like writing down my thoughts? Is this free writing? Is this creative writing? Am I imagining my future? Am I analyzing my past? Again, with your clients and audiences, when they go, okay, Tamsin, I'm all about this journaling. One question: what is journaling? How can I use journaling as part of this practice to really improve my life? Give us the journaling 101.
So All the things that you said. You can use journaling to ask particular questions about what it is I'm trying to create, or processing something in the past, or kind of, leaning into a particularly traumatic, experience. Interestingly, there's a guy called Dr. James Pennebaker at University of Austin, Texas, and he has done a whole load of research on the power of journaling and PTSD and handling traumatic events. And what's interesting is that he's found that if you journal for about 20 minutes between 3 and 5 times, you actually get benefit. You reduce your emotional negative responses to the traumatic event. If you start doing more than that, it becomes a sort of perseveration, and you kind of sink into it and you relive it too much, right? So with journaling, what I want to get my clients comfortable with is just putting pen to paper, right? And for some people, that's just, I'm going to start every morning writing a few sentences just to get what's out of my head, right? For other people, giving them particular keyed prompts, right? So for example, if I've got a client who is trying to make a big decision, right? And they're going, should I go back to law school? Should I pull the trigger on this training? Should I leave this relationship? I will give them a technique, which is the 100 list. And the 100 list is that you write down 1 to 100 on the side of your notepaper, and you don't get up until you've filled the 100 lines. And the point of that process, so it could be 100 reasons why I should, 100 reasons I could do this, 100 ways I could show love to my partner, 100 reasons why I should go back to law school, 100 reasons why I should stay in this marriage, 100 reasons why I should tell my boss to F you, right? Whatever the thing is that you're trying to dig at. The point is that past about 30, you start getting into the subconscious, and you start getting into all of those things that you were like, who knew they were in there? And at the end of that process, go back over your list of 100 and chunk them thematically, because what you'll see is that they are grouped into particular things, which can then give you the basis for taking action, right? So you can do very specific journaling questions or techniques like that, or you can do the it's 6 o'clock on a Monday morning. What do I want my day to look like?
So that's an amazing reframe, right? It's like you look at, because some people look at their day and it's like, oh God, I got this meeting, and then I got this, then I got to run this, and then as opposed to, okay, well, those are tasks, but what would you like your day to look like? Yeah. Right. So proactively, beyond the schedule, what feelings would you like to have? What experiences would you like to create? Right. What feelings would you like to create in others that are interacting with you?
What energy do I want to step into today? Right. Yeah. It's my choice about how I show up. Right. That's, if anything, the last few years has taught us is that it's really down to us to take radical responsibility for our own experiences. Right. So that is a lens of journaling of like, what do I want my day to look like? What energy do I need to step into? Who do I need to be so that I can create this? Right. Yeah. It's very empowering.
For sure. Well, we can't really be talking about habits without touching on sales habits, because a lot of folks listening, when they look at sales activity, it's like, prospecting, I got to get back to this client. I got to get, this deal is stuck and I have to have another meeting, etc. Mike Weinberg, who wrote a fantastic book called New Sales Simplified, which is a great book overall, but one line in it, I quote Mike often. He says, nobody defaults to prospecting activity. So like, let's say that we were not recording this podcast right now. Suddenly 45 minutes frees up on Tamsin's calendar, 45 minutes frees up on David's calendar. Neither one of us, at least not me, I'm not going to use that 45 minutes to do prospecting. I'm just not. Yeah. And I'm pretty good at sales, and we have a pretty good sized business. I'm still not going to default to prospecting activity. So let's say someone wants to develop a new habit, and maybe it's only small. We start with like 15 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day. Let's start small. Let's not go crazy. 30 minutes a day of prospecting activity. Obviously, I think we need to have a reason. We're not just doing that because, hey, I heard this on a podcast, I guess I'll go do this now. But there has to be some sort of internal reason or internal motivation that prospecting is an important thing for you to start a habit around. And then what would be the steps and the stages of intentionally building that prospecting habit?
So there'd be a couple of pieces. One would be to put it on your calendar, right? Because if we don't put things on our calendar, or we just put things like work on our calendar, right? We then overthink and reason our way out of it, right? So I'm a big fan of front loading the day with the things that you find like the least exciting, the least inspiring, the kind of like the hardest piece of your business to get through. So put it on your calendar right away, right? So that's one thing. The second is to, reframe selling. So if, for example, if selling and prospecting, then that whole business to you feels icky, it feels awkward, right? Lean into that and understand what is it that's making you feel icky, right? Is it that you're not believing in what you're selling? Right? Is it that you're not reaching out to the right people? Right? So start to get your journal and dig into what might be getting in the way of you doing that. And then on the other end of that, get clarity around why you're doing this, right? Because one of the things that I think for a lot of people, and I see in my community of coaches, is once you get into the energy of service, i.e. people need my services, right? And I'm doing this out of a desire to help people and make their lives better. If I'm not showing up and being like, hey, this is what I do, this is what's available, this is how I can help you, I might inadvertently be affecting somebody's life in the negative, right? So if you can flip the mindset around why you're doing this, right? Which is not that like, I need, when it becomes about like, I need to make the money, I've got like, it can get quite dry, and it can get, a lot of people are not driven by money as their big overarching goal, right? Like we all need money to live, and money is energy, but having that kind of that bigger vision of, I'm trying to change the world in this way, I'm trying to support people in this way. So having that like written on your wall, right? So when you go into your office, which a lot of us are doing from home these days, you can go, I want to create this world for these people. I want to create this life for my family, so this is my bigger why, right? Digging into a little bit around like, why am I so resistant to it? And then just putting it on your calendar and doing it. A lot of the time with our habits, like you wake up and you're like, I don't want to go to the gym. It's 20 degrees below freezing. Like, I just want to roll over and snuggle. Like, why would it? Because it's important to me to have a body that functions. I can't serve my children and my clients if my body's not functioning, right? And then if you're really struggling, give yourself a juicy reward, right? So I'm going to commit to doing this 15 minutes every single day. And at the end of the week, I'm going to book myself a massage, regardless of whether anybody signed up, because that is not necessarily within my control, right? I need to take action and not be tied to the outcome.
And that is such an important distinction about activity rewards and celebrations, frankly, as well as the result rewards and celebrations, right? This is where people, I think there's a disconnect that again, going back to habits, the habit is that we celebrate when we've accomplished something. No one ever accomplishes anything without the baby steps and the activity steps that led to that result. It's like, don't celebrate, don't celebrate, don't celebrate, don't celebrate, don't celebrate again. Yeah. Oh, and then you win. It's like, wait a minute. No. Yeah. Right? It's like win leads to win leads to win. The activity is the win. Blocking it in your calendar is the win. Yeah. Ultimately, the small ones generate the medium generates the big wins generate the supersized wins.
Exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about this, the another habit that I think most successful people have, which is to celebrate the wins along the way.
Absolutely.
Let's say someone wants to lose 50 pounds. I'm sure there's two kinds, at least there's two kinds that I want to talk about right now. There's probably 50 different kinds of people who want to lose 50 pounds. One person is like, okay, I'm a fat slob and I hate myself until I've lost the 50 pounds. The other person is, I am going to have, 3 carrots and 3 celery sticks instead of this brownie that's sitting in the fridge. In fact, I'm going to throw the brownie away and I'm going to celebrate that's a baby step win on the way to losing 50 pounds. And I'm sure there's a spectrum of things in the middle there. Talk about the habit of celebrating wins along the way in any aspect of your professional or personal life, and how that can be a reinforcing factor, kind of what you've seen, what you recommend.
Right. Well, part of it is that we have to go against our brain's natural evolutionary priming, which is that we look out for where we're failing. Our brains are designed to scan the savannah for the woolly mammoth, the saber-toothed tiger, and be like, we failed here. We didn't make it up. We didn't do, you know. So our brains are, even though we've, had this extraordinary evolution in the last 100 years, you think about, where, like, I think about where my grandparents were, and like where we are now. Massive evolution, but our brains still are primed to look for what is not working, look for where we're failing, look for where we're not succeeding, look at how we're doing things wrong, right? So it's really important to start stepping into the energy of success and brag, right? We have to decode and break down a little bit the sort of energy around the kind of the braggy, broy, like raw energy, but recognize that there is huge power in being able to acknowledge your wins and cheer your wins. What happens in our bodies when we do that is that we actually produce a nitrous oxide, which opens all of the arteries, makes our blood flow more, and makes us literally makes us juicier. Like everything starts working, all of our systems start working when we're like, I did this thing. So yes, so creating those reward feedback loops are so important. And like with all of the stuff on manifesting, manifesting has become such a big thing in our culture in the last few years, and what makes all of those things possible is that we're laying the neural pathways for the world we're creating, for the life we're creating. And every time we prune, like a rose bush, right? Every time we prune and we take a step towards the positive, we're making this thing happen. But the big thing that we have to really lean into is the emotion. What makes things stick in the long term is the emotion, right? So when I sign a client, I put on a particular song and I dance and I feel it in my body, right? And then I go and do something that feels celebratory, like go and have a plate of oysters, go and buy that t-shirt that I've been eyeing up and thinking it was a little bit expensive. Yeah, but it makes me happy because it's got a great graphic on it by a local designer or something, right? So I'm reinforcing the energetic flow of money, right? Money is coming to me and I'm going to put it back out again into my community. But I'm also feeling the emotions in my body, not just like, oh yeah, hit her for another financial goal. Nah,
This is so important, because I think there are people, I love what you said about the brain, right? The brain's always looking for the negative. The brain's always looking for the failure. The brain's always looking for the danger. There are people that and I'm sure you have one or two clients like this, not most, you do all this amazing transformational work. And they're like, Tamsin, you've totally changed my life. I feel so light. I feel so energetic. I feel so optimistic. 3 days later, Tamsin, life sucks. I don't know what to do. I'd say, well, but 3 days ago, we had this huge breakthrough. 3 days ago, it's like, I'm never going to look at my life the same way. Everything is beautiful now. I totally get it. You're a genius. I got it. 3 days later, they're back in the dumps. They're back in the doldrums. And they just magnetically or gravitationally pull themselves back into this place. And I could almost say this habit of imposter syndrome, perfectionism, negativity, cynicism. People like that. I mean, first of all, are there quote unquote people like that are just hardcore, negative, cynical, pessimistic, very down on themselves? And that habit is very difficult to break, maybe even sometimes impossible. I'm not sure if that's even a thing. Versus people where you do the same exact work and they truly have an inflection point in their whole business, in their whole outlook, and there's some permanent shift that has happened inside of them that now gives them the capability to self-coach and self-redirect and self-manage, because we all go to those dark places. I mean, life is hard. Life can be brutal. We all go to those dark places. Some people that you work with, I'm sure you can transfer this tool set, and then their life is truly transformed. Other people, and I hope this is the teeny minority percentage, they're just hardcore negative, pessimistic, down on themselves. sad sack cases. What's going on there?
So I think, firstly, I think we have to distinguish between people who have anxiety and depression, right? And who are struggling on a regular basis with a diagnosis. And, what we've seen since the pandemic is the massive increase in scripts written for anxiety and depression, right?
And that's like a real medical kind of brain
like
chemistry thing.
2019, 11% of Americans were living with a diagnosis of anxiety and depression, and I believe it's now up in like the late 30s, right? So, this is a really huge thing, and the rise in the 13 to 19-year-old, the teen population, is massive. The number of scripts for anxiety and depression has risen into the 40%, right? So, firstly, we have to distinguish between that. Secondly, we have to recognize that some people, from being in relationships, from having toxic marriages, from being in environments, or being part of a minority group that has been systemically, oppressed, race, gender, LGBTQ, etc., right? We all know about that. So some people are fighting against structural or organic, etc., past, which makes it much harder to break those habits, right? Because there is a comfort in thinking these ways, right? And once we've got these neural pathways in place, like addictions, all of these things, they're much harder to break. So, when that comes up, my role as a coach is to, make sure that I step back and look and see that, that there aren't other things at play, and that we don't, I'm a big fan of therapy, right? I'm in therapy. I encourage my clients to go into therapy to find other healing modalities, hypnotherapy, right? All the different other ways of looking at support. But then the thing that I find with most of my clients is that by giving them these tools around mindset, meditation, journaling, and all the other kind of tools that I support my clients with, when they have one of those like, moments and they fall off the habit wagon, right? They get back on it more quickly because they catch themselves and they're like, oh, this is up to me to make this change, right? Yes, I've just been fired. Yes, my wife has just walked out. Yes, my dog has just been given a terminal diagnosis for cancer. All the horrible shit that comes up in our lives. What I find with most of my clients is they kind of stop and they're like, okay, pause. I was going to let myself feel crappy for a minute. That's okay. Life has thrown me some really bad moments, but now it's up to me to take these tools and start rebuilding again, right?
For sure. One thing we haven't yet talked about that I'm curious, because so much of this work is inside out, right? We work on the inside and the outside starts to improve. There's a couple of strategies and a couple of things that are out there in the world that I think are outside in. So for example, affirmations, right? I'm a powerful, amazing human being. I am a money magnet. I'm a magnet for wealth and prosperity. Some people, and again, there's this kind of a dichotomy of responses to this. Some people are like, that is utter horse crap. By me writing that down or envisioning it or, playing out scenes in my mind of what would it look like if I had $1 zillion, that's not going to impact my reality. And there's other people that are like, oh my gosh, that is so empowering. That is so energizing. That is so clarifying. Talk a little bit about affirmations and what some of the myths around affirmations are and what some of the actual healthy neuroscience, well-researched concepts around affirmations might be.
Yeah, so it is. I think you're right. People tend to fall into that's a whole load of old bollocks, and they like this is life-changing camps around that, right? One of the things that I find with this is a whole load of bollocks energy is people struggle with writing something that isn't reality, right? So with people who have said that to me, I say, phrase it slightly differently, right? So for example, with the 50-pound weight loss, right? I am living my best life and taking care and creating a healthy body. I am cultivating a healthy relationship with food. I am working on healing my relationship with food and overeating, right? So, leaning into what I'm moving towards rather than I am a size 6, right? Or I weigh 120 pounds or whatever the kind of concrete thing is, right? So one is to reframe that. But there is definitely huge power in affirmations. And the way that I describe it, which I sort of touched on a little bit earlier, is that, our brains have all of these potentials, right? And if you look at a rose bush that you never prune, you never get beautiful blooms because the energy is just scattered everywhere. So what you're doing with an affirmation is that you are creating a path, right? And the more you create that path, the more likely you are that it's going to come true, right? So there's a couple of things that this generates. One is that you start stepping into that energy, right? And when you're stepping into that energy, what's going to happen is that your reticular activating system, which is the part of the brain which deals with all of the stimuli that come towards you, right? We have a huge amount of information that comes at us every single day, every single moment. And when you make a decision of, I am going to be paid, 50K a month for this part of my business. I'm going to have a red convertible. I'm always going to fly business class. I'm going to attract clients who I'm going to have this kind of relationship. I'm going to retire by the sea. Whatever these, affirmations are that you're creating, is that your reticular activating system is now going to go, oh, bing, 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 and it's going to start funneling in the things that are in alignment with that affirmation that you've created. And suddenly you're going to have that conversation with somebody and they're going to go, oh, well, I've just got this plot of land by the sea. And you're like, ding, 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 right? Whereas if you don't create that, it's really like the way I describe it to my clients is if you don't take some time to think about the life you're creating, you're just going to be following along. Whatever else happens in the world, whatever else the people around you. If you want to take charge, you need to get specific.
So powerful. And, it's one of the ways that I talk about this from pure layman's standpoint. It is very hard to hit a target that you cannot see, right? So it's like, well, I don't know what I want my life to look like. I don't know what I want my business to look like. I don't know what I want my love life to look like. As opposed to, she is 5'10", she's French, she's a brunette. And it's like, I have a friend visiting from France. It's so funny. She's this beautiful brunette. And again, like you said, woo, okay, I'd like to meet her.
Right. It's like getting really specific, And the other thing about affirmations too, that I say to people is you have to get into the energy of what it's going to feel like when you get it. Because you're writing your affirmation of like, I want to make 50K a month in my business. Like the universe is going to be like, screw you. Like, you're not excited about this.
Right. Well, this also brings up this concept, and this is true in every aspect of life, but let's keep it with the money and the sales. We have sort of an internal barometer, don't we? We kind of have that comfort zone. And I think if you look at the successful people out there who are kind of constantly climbing up, better relationships, better health, better sleep, better weight management, better business, better sales, better marketing, better whatever, better contribution, right? They're doing more charitable work. They're more service to others. There is that barometer that says, okay, I'm making let's go with you said 50K a month. I'm doing 10K a month now. Suddenly I have a 20K a month. Oh my gosh, this is great. But then they do something to self-sabotage, or they take their foot off the gas pedal and they go back the next month to a 10K a month or a 5K a month or a 0K a month because their results somehow do not match their identity. How does that internal barometer or that sense of identity that I'm not worth having an amazing, fantastic partner in life, I'm not worth being 50 pounds lighter, I'm not worthy of having this amazing business. How do we escape that barometer?
Well, man, isn't that the $1 million question? So, I think it's a combination of all these things, right? So one is that you have, every time you increase something, you'll basically have to get comfortable with the baseline, right? This is the baseline expectation of what I'm going to be paid for this service. This is the baseline expectation of how I'm going to be treated in this situation. This is the baseline of how I'm going to, whatever it is, fill in the blank, right? And so firstly, you have to do some of that, reframing of what is my baseline. And that's also where a lot of that kind of historical, systemic, racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia comes, can really create a difficult lens to shift out of that, right?
Yeah.
So we have to sort of recognize that there's a different baseline. The other thing that is so important is to be around people who are on your side, right? So being in masterminds, working with coaches, having friends that are affirming your new role, your new position, your new growth, right? It's the enabler versus supporter, right? So it's the, I'm quitting alcohol for January, I'm quitting sugar for Lent, I'm going vegan, whatever it is, right? And you have those people around you that are like, well, why the hell would you do that? Like, alcohol is life. What's life without donuts and brownies? Whatever it is, right? Like, how could you survive without a steak on July 4th? All of those, you get these people, and those are the people who are the enablers, right? They're the ones who are frightened by the fact that you are redefining yourself, because every time we get to a new level, we change a habit, change a behavior, we're changing how we show up in the world. And that can be frightening for a lot of people, ourselves included, because suddenly we're changing who we are. Because when you change your behavior, you are fundamentally changing who you are. And we like to understand people. We like to look at somebody and go, oh, he's in these categories, so he'll vote this way, he'll think this way, he'll be pro that, anti that, he's likely to be this, what sort of, right? Because that makes it easy for us to categorize all of the people around us, right? And so when people start shaking out of that and going, oh, no, like, this is who I am now. I'm a person who, drives a BMW, makes 30K a month, donates 5K a month to this charity, refuses to tolerate X, Y, or Z. Some people are like, when Harry met Sally, I'll have what she's having, right? And others are like, oh, no, like, get back down to where you were, and I understood who you were and what decisions you were making.
Don't get too big for your britches,
right?
So to speak.
Right.
Wow. Well, last couple of questions for you. The final question is, what are some cool things that we have coming up, and how all of that works, and then some resources and some free gifts that we can give to people. Before we even get to that, if folks were to take one overarching concept from our conversation today about habits, good, bad, and otherwise, what would you hope that overarching takeaway around habits would be?
You have the power, and give yourself grace. And I think the third piece, which is sort of related to this, is that consistency versus time is the thing that will make the habit stick. So what do I mean by that? If you're going to meditate every day, even if for one day it's 3 minutes and another day it's for half an hour. That's better than meditating once a week for an hour. You're more likely to cultivate the long-term habit. So that's the first thing. What fun big things coming up? Well, I have got a 6-module certification coming up at the local business school, Tri-C Corporate College. And it's called the Mindful Leadership Certification, and it's virtual, so you can do it anywhere you like in the world. It starts in October, and it's really looking at how we can create the habits of mindful leadership. Because one of the things that we've really seen with the Great Resignation, with the pandemic, with all of the shifts in our society in the last few years, is that just telling people what to do is not going to fly anymore, right?
Yes.
We need to cultivate emotional intelligence and those sorts of habits.
Let's spend a minute talking about this certification thing. So I come in, I do this amazing program, I then get certified to incorporate this body of work into my practice. Is that correct?
So what you'll get certified in is, you'll be certified in being a mindful leadership, being a mindful leader, which basically means you're going to have a whole load of tools to take back to your organization to implement, such as how to create healthy habits, such as how to work with your mindset in a really effective way, such as managing your roles and navigating the kind of overwhelm of, moving between multiple roles, such as understanding and prioritizing, looking at your company culture and how that relates to the bottom line. And then that bigger piece of, like, if you don't keep that bigger vision in the mirror, in the window, looking at, you're going to fall off track.
Incredible. And so tell us how this works, dates, details. Is there a website that we can link people
Sure,
to?
I've got a link I can give you to that. It's Tri-C Corporate College here in Cleveland, Ohio, and it starts October 5th, and it's every other week for 6 weeks, a 3-hour training. And so the sections are changing your habits, getting what you want, improving company culture, and it's virtual, so you can do it anywhere in the world.
Love that. So we're going to pop a link to that in the show notes directly under this episode at thesellingshow.com. What else? I mean, how else can people get connected and stay connected to more Tamsin Astor brilliance? Are there resources, website, LinkedIn? How do you want folks to connect with you?
So you can find me that I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook the most. And I can give you a link to the 10 mistakes people make when they're trying to change their habits, which will get you into my email list, which goes out once a week. And I drop all of these great truth bombs every week in there.
Excellent. So we'll drop a link to that free report also under this episode at thesellingshow.com. Basically, everything good is under this episode. Go to the website, find the Tamsin Astor episode, click on all the links. You will have all the goodies at your fingertips. Well, Tamsin, thank you, thank you, thank you. Such a joy and a pleasure to have you on. And thank you for dropping all the value bombs here, even before people get connected to you. And this was just such a tremendous, tremendous interview.
Thank you so much for having me. I always love our conversations, David, online and offline.